Welcome to chapter 17 of your 2024 story. My name is Michelle, owner and founder of Movara Fitness Resort, and I am so excited today to be talking about a really important aspect that is very difficult to navigate because of all of the different challenges that we've all experienced over the years. And this is tuning really into listening to our bodies. And it's again, a fundamental yet profound practice that listening to our body can cultivate a deeper connection with our physical selves. It's about learning to interpret and honor our body's signals as really ultimately the cornerstone of health and well-being. So again, it's a tricky thing because I know for me, if I'm like, I'm just tired and I don't feel good and I need to rest, and oftentimes that's for sure the case. But if we were truly listening to our bodies would crave movement and they crave feeling good. So if our bodies are not feeling good and we are tired, that is a sign of our bodies talking to us. And so it's learning how to decipher and learn when we need to actually rest or when our body's actually needing movement, stretching, physical activity. I can think of literally thousands of examples of guests that come to the resort that are so out of tune with their bodies that they really don't know what their bodies are telling them. In fact, most of the time, guests realize that, oh, wow, I can do a lot more than I thought I could do. However, there are, again, thousands of examples that I've worked with guests over the years, also employees, and have experienced this myself, where we don't listen to the body and we don't know when to slow down. We don't know when to take breaks, and we overdo it, and we become burnout, and we have injury or we have illness. So there's a very fine line, and it's a very fundamental, profound technique and skill to be able to learn that I'm constantly working at. So again, we're going to be talking about the art of listening to our body this week. It requires patience. I laugh because it's something that I struggle with. It requires attention, which can be very difficult. And I think this is one of the most important things, that it does require practice. It's not going to just be easy and come naturally. We're going to continually work at it for years and years. And I don't think that we'll ever get to the point where we're perfect at it. I know for me, I'm getting better, and I have seen improvement over the years. So it does require practice. It's also about tuning into the subtle cues and messages that our bodies communicate literally every day, every minute, every moment, whether it's hunger. Is our body telling our body's physical needs? Is it fatigue that our body needs to rest? Is it stress? Oftentimes our body has physical cues of stress. We might heat up, we might get clammy, we might get red in the face, or also just, again, like we talked about, the need for movement. So our body really does talk to us and speak to us all the time. We just need to get better at listening. So recognizing these signals allows us to respond with care and intention, fostering a harmonious balance between activity and rest, work and play, right? Nourishment and indulgence. So the weekly journal prompt this week has us reflect on a time when we actually did listen to our bodies, and also reflecting on a time when we didn't. And how did it communicate its needs to us, and how did we respond? And what can we learn from this intention to improve our overall well-being? It is, again, tricky to listen to our bodies because we live in a world that prioritizes productivity and external achievements. And so we have the pressure of go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve. And it's easy to overlook our body's needs. And ignoring these signals can lead, again, to burnout, injury, and disconnection from our physical selves. By listening to our bodies, we cultivate a practice of self-care and respect. I don't know that we've ever really looked at respect for our physical well-being. Acknowledging that our physical well-being is integral to our overall life story. So this is a really important chapter. Each week as we talk about these different chapters, I'm always like, wow, this is a really important chapter. And this might be the most important chapter. This might be the most important chapter. And next week's is actually, again, another important chapter. Um, but listening to our bodies can be a tricky thing and a tricky chapter, but an important chapter. So I'm just going to talk about 4 quick things that we can do to be better at listening to our bodies. And I love the way that this first one is phrased. It's mindful movement, not just movement. You've heard me preach about movement, and I'm a big believer in movement, but mindful movement. Engaging in activities like yoga or Tai Chi. If you've ever been to San Francisco, I love the parks there. They're filled with people doing Tai Chi in the morning, and probably other areas of obviously the world, but that's just one area in particular that I've seen it, where in the mornings, individuals are getting up when the sun is rising, and they're really getting in tune with their bodies, and they're grounding, and they're paying attention to the body's overall just rhythm and movement. And they encourage any activity that encourages body's awareness. So oftentimes when we're just going through the motions or different exercises that don't require us to actually be aware and in tune, like Pilates or yoga or Tai Chi. So doing some of these mindful movements, you could notice how your body feels during different movements and what it tells you. So again, if we just go through the motions of, let's say, just walking, which I'm a big fan of and I love, I love daily movement and I love daily walking. However, it's a very one movement. But if I stop to stretch, to bend over, or if I finish my walk and I spend some time, I'm like, ooh, I can feel different things. And if we do different activities, that actually causes us to be aware of our body. So the mindful movement is an important thing. If you're not engaging in some type of mindful movement daily or regularly, I would highly encourage mindful movement activities. Find what it is that can really get you aware of how your body's responding. And it can be even just weight training in a different way, where you're going through full range of motions, where your body's, again, forcing you to be aware of different parts of your body. The second is another one that I love, and we've talked about it in past chapters. And again, mentioning that some of the chapters I think are extremely important. This is one of those, but intuitive eating. So rather than following strict diets, try intuitive eating. This is a tricky and hard one. There's several books that are out there about intuitive eating, but intuitive eating emphasizes eating based on your body's hunger cues and making food choices that feel good. So if we're following strict, regimented programs, we become immune to our even knowing when our body's hungry or not. One of the things I love when guests come to the resort, that they have often commented that, wow, just having breakfast, lunch, and dinner at regular times, my body actually, I forgot what it feels like to feel hungry, actual hunger pains. Now, that's not saying at the resort you're hungry. In fact, a lot of times guests are like, man, I'm getting so much food, I'm not as hungry as I thought I would be. But just having, 4 hours in between a meal, and recognizing, I've talked earlier in earlier chapters, the hunger scale. So when you're eating intuitively, rather than, oh, I've got to eat this time. I had a friend once, or just an acquaintance, that she literally would set her alarm to go off to tell her when to eat. And I'm like, holy cow, what if you're not hungry? And she just would follow this really strict regimented diet. So we want to encourage intuitive eating, where we, again, listen to the body's hungers, the body's needs. So that's the second thing, mindful movement, intuitive eating. Last week, we talked about the importance of rest and recovery, which is the third thing. So paying attention to the signs of fatigue and stress. This is where, again, I've seen thousands of guests. I've seen lots of employees that don't pay attention to these signs, and they get burnt out. They get resentful. They also have injury or illnesses and aren't well. So not paying attention to the signs of fatigue and stress and allowing yourself adequate rest. Some of my honestly favorite employees are the ones that are very respectful to their time. They know, like, hey, I can work these hours, and they don't push past their limits. obviously we are very grateful, and we have a lot of employees that go above and beyond, but we don't want them to do that at the expense of their health, because then it's not a good situation for either party. So, really knowing and respecting your body's needs and avoiding fatigue and stress, because nobody wins. You or who you're giving all of your time and energy to wins at the end of the day if you become burnt out. Moms and dads that are working and are overstressed, they're not giving everything they need to give to their children and to their jobs. And so this is a really important step in being better at listening to our bodies and practicing a regular relaxation techniques such as meditation and deep breathing exercises. Over the years in just in the industry, there's a lot of emphasis, and the power of the breath is, I don't think that we give credit and acknowledge what it actually does. The ability to be able to just stop and take a deep breath and calm the body down is actually pretty miraculous of what our minds can get in tune with our bodies and connected with the breath. It's a really powerful experience if you've never really practiced meditation or deep breathing. A lot of people maybe look at it as kind of silly and not as, they overlook the power of the breath and the meditation. It's a pretty amazing gift that we've been given to be able to calm the body down with just a single breath, calm the mind down with just a single breath. So learning those relaxation and meditation techniques that you practice regularly, again, it needs to be something that you feel comfortable doing. It doesn't have to be weird or hoaxy. It can just be going outside when the sun's coming up or when the sun's going down and sitting and being quiet and still and paying attention to your breath. And even just doing some regular exercises of counting the breath and holding the breath and deep breaths in through the nose and out through the nose, and learning that last week we talked about stress and recovery, and the week before we talked about sleep. And we know that if we are breathing in and out through the mouth, we're usually in stress. And if we're able to breathe in and out through the nose, we can calm the body down. So paying attention to those signs of fatigue and stress, learning those relaxation techniques and rest and recovery is a really important strategy for becoming better at listening to our bodies. The last step is regular check-ins. So this can be on a weekly basis. With our online program with Movara Home, we have our guests do a regular assessment, a weekly assessment. At the resort, we do a weekly assessment. Now, this is on physical things, but it's just good to check in and say, like, okay, how am I doing? Check in with your boss, check in with your kids, check in with your spouse or, your friends and your family, and see, okay, how am I performing? And set aside moments throughout your day to pause and check in with your body. Ask yourself, how are you feeling physically and emotionally, mentally as well? I love this quote: your body is precious. It is our vehicle for awakening. Treat it with care, by Buddha. And it really reminds me of the importance of treating our bodies with kindness and attention, recognizing it is key to our discovery towards awakening and well-being. So this is again, it's hard to pinpoint like which chapter is the most important. They're all going to be important. And this is chapter 17 of 52. Each chapter is going to be important in really writing the story that you want to be living. So paying attention and saying, okay, how am I with listening to my body? Do I listen to my body? Again, I mentioned, and I have a few, one just recently, like literally, saved her life by just paying attention to her body's cues. She was in the airport and she was her heart was racing, her breathing was becoming intense, and it was abnormal. And she was like, I can't get on this airplane. And thankfully went to the hospital and found heart failure. Had she gone on that plane, she might have experienced something even worse. And it really took that moment and that experience to say, hey, awakening, a wake-up call to say, all right, I really need to pay attention to my body. This person, this individual works literally like 24/7 and is, you call them workaholics, and we all have our areas that we maybe are extreme in. And one area is, just working hard and not slowing down and not taking care of our bodies and not taking care of our health. So I've seen it happen a lot with guests. I've seen it happen with employees where they don't pay attention to their body's needs and cues, and they become overworked, and there's injuries, there's sicknesses. And I've seen it with myself. I've seen it. I've literally have been forced at times to say, you can't go in. You can't. You have to stop. You have to slow down. We hope that we can just do it before maybe something even worse may happen. So it's important to get to the point where we become better at listening to our bodies, where we have a good relationship with our bodies. We understand the body's limits. We understand if our body is so tired, if our body is weak and our body is not strong, it may actually be craving movement. Again, the movement is powerful. So it's a fine line, and there's a connection between our mind and our body and really our soul of, again, if we're listening to our bodies, we're going to crave movement. We're going to crave strength training. We're going to crave stretching. We're going to know that our body needs that. Literally every time I am so exhausted and so tired, I won't say there are a few times where I actually need rest, but when I am so tired, I'm like, you know what? I got to get out and move. My body needs movement so I can get some energy. So it's a tricky thing, and we want to listen to when to slow down and when to avoid, overworking and creating healthy boundaries and a good relationship. Again, remember, it's going to take practice. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm still working on it, but I know it's important. And I know that as we focus this week on listening to our bodies, it can be an important chapter of the story we want to be living. So again, pay attention. We have emailed the journal prompt this week where you can actually put pen to paper and decide, am I good at listening to my body? I know I can improve. Next week, I'm excited. We are going to be talking about building mental toughness. Oh man, that's a big, heavy, extremely important chapter that I'm excited to dive into. So join us next week for chapter 18. Thanks so much.